Shattered canvas, the morning light filtered through the tall windows of Fiona Reed's studio, illuminating specks of dust that danced in the air like tiny stars. Her hands, speckled with blue and gold paint, moved across the canvas with practiced precision. This mural commission for the local community center was her largest project in months, and she needed it to be perfect. "You're frowning again," said Delia, her friend and studio partner, placing a chipped mug of coffee beside her. "That's your I'm overthinking this face." Fiona tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, leaving a smudge of paint on her temple. "The board wants something inspiring, but not political, whatever that means. You'll figure it out. You always do." Fiona wished she'd shared Delia's confidence. At 32, she'd expected to be somewhere different, somewhere bigger perhaps. Not struggling to pay rent on a studio in Westbridge, a town most people only knew as a stop on the way to somewhere else. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She would have ignored it, except the name caught her eye. Noah Winters. Her hand froze mid-stroke. "Everything okay?" Adelia asked. "Fine," Fiona said too quickly, setting down her brush. "Need some air." Outside, she leaned against the brick wall, staring at her phone. The headline read, "Horizon Systems CEO Noah Winters announces revolutionary AI platform. Stock soars 30%. Below it was his photo-dark hair, now with threads of silver at the temples. Sharp jawline and eyes that still held the intensity she remembered so well. Eyes that had once looked at her like she was his entire world. 3 years since she'd walked away. 3 years of carefully avoiding anything about him, and now here he was, staring back at her from her phone screen. "You can delete the app, but you can't delete the memories," she muttered to herself. Back when they met at Roswell University, Noah had been a brilliant but broke computer science student with big dreams and bigger student loans. Fiona was studying fine arts on a partial scholarship, working nights at the campus cafe. They'd fallen for each other over late-night conversations about changing the world through technology. She threw art for 5 years. They'd built a life together. She'd been there when he started coding Horizon in their tiny apartment, sleeping on the couch because their bedroom had been converted into his office. She'd brought him food when he forgot to eat, believed in him when investors wouldn't return his calls. And then, seemingly overnight, Horizon Systems became the tech industry's darling. Noah's life transformed at dizzying speed. Suddenly, there were meetings with venture capitalists, business trips to Silicon Valley, galas where Fiona stood awkwardly in borrowed dresses while people discussed stock options and market projections. "You coming back in?" The doorway, interrupting Fiona's thoughts. "Yeah," she replied, shoving her phone deep into her pocket as if burying the memories along with it. That evening, as Fiona walked home, rain began to fall. She pulled her jacket tighter, hurrying past the electronics store where a wall of televisions displayed the evening news.
Oh.
Noah's face appeared on every screen, his voice carrying out to the wet sidewalk. ... What we've created will fundamentally change how we interact with technology. ... She quickened her pace. The rain intensified, soaking through her thin jacket, the universe's way of reminding her that some wounds never fully heal. Merely scab over, waiting for the slightest touch to reopen them. At home, she peeled off her wet clothes and stood in the shower until the hot water ran cold, trying to wash away the day. But Noah's face lingered in her mind, not the polished CEO from the news, but the boy who'd once written code on napkins and promised her the stars. "It's ancient history," she told her reflection as she wiped steam from the bathroom mirror. But even as she said it, she knew some histories were never truly ancient. Some were written in permanent ink on the soul. Golden Cages, the gala at the Winters Foundation, was in full swing. A sea of designer gowns and custom tuxedos flowing through the grand ballroom of what was once a historic bank. Noah Winters stood at the center of it all, glass of champagne untouched. In his hand, as investors and industry titans orbited around him like planets around a sun. "The new neural interface is revolutionary," gushed a venture capitalist whose name Noah had already forgotten. "My team thinks it could redefine accessibility in computing." Noah nodded, offering the practiced smile he'd perfected over the last 3 years, confident but not arrogant, engaged but not overeager. "That's exactly what we're aiming for. Technology shouldn't just be for those who adapt to it. It should adapt to everyone. His eyes drifted to the enormous windows overlooking the city's skyline. Somewhere out there was Fiona, probably in her studio or walking along the coast with her sketchbook. Did she ever look up at these same stars and remember? Noah, his assistant. Jenna appeared at his elbow. Senator Richards would like a word before he leaves, of course. He handed her his untouched champagne and straightened his tie. Another conversation, another performance. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Noah loosened his bow tie and poured himself a drink he actually intended to consume. The wall of windows offered a panoramic view of the city below, twinkling, like a circuit board come to life. Success had given him everything he'd ever wanted professionally. So why did it feel so hollow? He opened his laptop, hesitated, then typed Fiona Reed Art into the search bar. He'd done this more times than he cared to admit. Her website appeared first updated recently with new murals and community projects. She looked different in the photos, her hair shorter, her smile more reserved. But her work had evolved, becoming more confident, more distinctly her own. Noah clicked through the images, pausing on one showing Fiona standing beside a massive ocean-themed mural. She was looking not at the camera, but at her creation, with an expression of quiet pride he recognized from their years together. It was the look she'd had when she finished her first gallery piece. When she'd taught art to children in the community center near their old apartment, the memories washed over him like a tide Fiona in their first apartment. Paint splattered and laughing as she decorated their salvaged furniture. Fiona sketching his profile while he worked, her eyes intense with concentration. Fiona's face the night of his first major investor meeting, so proud yet somehow already distant. As if she could see the path ahead clearer than he could, he closed. The laptop had moved to the built-in bar. Pouring another drink as his mind traveled back to their last months together, the arguments had started small. Fiona missing an important gallery opening because of a last-minute dinner with investors. Noah canceling their weekend plans when a coding issue needed his immediate attention. Then larger conflicts emerged, her discomfort at industry events. His growing frustration with her reluctance to embrace their new lifestyle. "These people aren't my people, Noah," she'd said after a particularly uncomfortable charity gala. "Look at me like I'm some curiosity you've picked up along the way." "That's not true," he'd insisted, though part of him wondered if it was. "You belong here as much as anyone, do I?" Her voice had been soft, wounded. When Patricia Whitmore asked what I actually do, and I said I was an artist, she asked if I meant I was an art acquisition, as if the only way I could relate to art was by buying it. The final breaking point came after the Forbes cover, 30 Under 30, the mind behind Horizon Systems. Suddenly, they couldn't go anywhere without being recognized. Photographers appeared when they went out to dinner. Tech blogs speculated about their relationship. "I feel like I'm disappearing," Fiona had said one night, sitting on the edge of their bed, looking small against the massive windows of the penthouse he'd been so proud to buy. "Like I'm becoming Noah Winter's girlfriend instead of Fiona Reed." "That's ridiculous," he'd responded too quickly, too dismissively. "You're still you, am I? 'Cause I don't recognize myself anymore. This world, your world, it's changing. Me, and not in ways I like." A week later, she was gone. A note on the kitchen counter. "I can't be the person you need in this life. Please forget me and find someone who fits your world better than I ever could." Noah downed his drink, the memory, burning worse than the alcohol. He hadn't fought for her. Convinced she was right, that she deserved better than being dragged into a life she hadn't chosen, he'd let her go. His phone rang, dragging him back to the present. The screen displayed Marcus Chen board call. Noah took a deep breath, compartmentalizing, as he'd learned to do. Tonight he'd allow himself these memories, this pain. Tomorrow, he'd be the CEO again, focused and unshakable. But as he answered the call, one thought lingered. He'd achieved everything he'd set out to do, created technology that was changing the world. Yet the one person he wanted to share it with was living a different life, in a different world, a world where, perhaps, she was happier without him. Separate worlds, the wind carried the scent of salt and promise, as Fiona climbed the narrow stairs to the lighthouse studio. For the past 2 years, This abandoned lighthouse keeper's quarters in the coastal town of Port Madeline had been her sanctuary and workplace. The town's Arts Council had offered it as part of their Artist-in-Residence program. And when the year ended, she'd scraped together enough money to rent it permanently. "Morning, Ms. Reed," called Tomas, the elderly harbor master who seemed to consider the lighthouse his domain, despite Fiona's tenancy. "Storm coming in tonight. Might want to secure those canvases on the deck." "Thanks for the warning," she replied with a smile. Juggling her coffee and a bag of groceries, inside, the circular room was bathed in natural light. Fiona set down her things and moved to the workspace where her current project waited, a series of interconnected panels depicting the town's history for the new library. The commission had come after her mural for the community center had been featured in a regional art magazine. Her phone chimed with a text from her agent. "Vivian, museum curator, called. They want to discuss a potential exhibition. Call me ASAP." Fiona stared at the message, a mixture of elation and disbelief washing over her. A museum exhibition had been her dream since art school. She'd almost given up on it during those last difficult months with Noah. When her art had taken a back seat to the chaos of his rising career and her own increasing sense of displacement, she dialed Vivian's number with slightly trembling fingers. "The Berkeley Contemporary wants a proposal," Vivian said without preamble. "Your community engagement pieces caught their attention. We're doing a series on art as social practice." Barkley Fiona's stomach tightened. That was less than an hour from where Noah lived. When would this be? 3 months from now. "I told them you'd send concepts by next week." Vivian paused. "This is huge, Fiona. The kind of opportunity that changes careers." After the call, Fiona walked out onto the small deck that wrapped around the lighthouse. Below, the ocean stretched to the horizon, waves crashing against the rocky shore. This place had healed her in ways she hadn't thought possible when she first arrived, heartbroken, identity in fragments, questioning every choice she'd made. Here, she'd rebuilt herself piece by piece. The local community had embraced her art, commissioned murals and workshops. Children came for art classes on weekends. Elderly residents shared stories that inspired her work. She'd found purpose again, and with it, a new confidence in her artistic voice. But now Barkley so close to her old life to Noah. That evening, as the promised storm rolled in, Fiona sat by the window with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone until she found what she was looking for, the tech news article about Horizon Systems' new platform. Noah looked different now. More polished, certainly, but also more remote somehow. The passionate, sometimes awkward coding genius she'd loved had been replaced by this media-trained CEO who spoke in careful sound bites about neural interfaces and digital revolution. Yet sometimes, in interviews, she caught glimpses of the old. No one he talked about technology's potential to connect people, to solve real problems, rather than create artificial needs. Those moments made her heart ache with recognition. The lighthouse windows rattled as thunder boomed outside. Ona wrapped herself tighter in her sweater, remembering another storm years ago. When they'd lost power in their first apartment, they'd made a fort of blankets, lit candles, and talked until dawn about everything and nothing. Noah had sketched out his vision for Horizon on a paper napkin, eyes bright with possibility. She'd believed in that vision completely. "We were so young," she whispered to the empty room. She'd been just 24 when they met, 29 when she left. Now, at 32, she sometimes felt decades older. The pain had aged her, but so had the growth that followed. She was stronger now, more certain of who she was and what she wanted. Her exhibition proposal would need to reflect that growth. Barkley would expect something provocative, contemporary. Not just pretty pictures, but art that said something. About connection, community, belonging, all the things she'd found here in Port Madeline after losing her way. As lightning illuminated the churning ocean below, Fiona made a decision. She would create the exhibition. She would go to Barkley. And if paths crossed with Noah, well, they were different people now. Perhaps they could even be happy for each other's successes. But deep down, in a place she rarely allowed herself to visit, she wondered Had he moved on completely? Or did he sometimes stand at his wall of windows, looking out at the same stars, remembering what they'd once been to each other? Unfinished symphony, the private jet hummed steadily as it cut through clouds above the Pacific. Noah sat alone, laptop open but untouched, watching the ocean far below. His board meeting in Tokyo had concluded early, giving him a rare day with no obligations. Instead of staying for the networking events, he'd made an impulsive decision that surprised even himself. "Sir, we'll be landing in 30 minutes, the flight attendant informed him. "Car service is confirmed for your arrival." "Thank you, Helen." Noah closed his laptop. There would be no work today. Port Madeline wasn't on any list of must-visit destinations. It was a working harbor town that had reinvented itself with a burgeoning art scene and maritime tourism. Noah had discovered Fiona's connection to the place entirely by accident. Through an article about coastal revitalization featuring her lighthouse studio, mural project that the revelation had hit him like a physical blow, she'd been here all this time, building a new life less than 3 hours from San Francisco. Close enough that he could have driven there any day in the past 2 years. Now, as the small regional airport came into view, doubt crept in. What exactly was he doing? Showing up unannounced after 3 years of silence? It seemed romantic in theory, potentially disastrous in practice. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Where are you?" "Tokyo team says you left." Noah switched the phone to airplane mode without responding. For once, Horizon Systems would have to wait. The town was exactly as pictured in the article, quaint storefronts along the harbor. Fishing boats mixed with pleasure craft, art galleries nestled between seafood restaurants. Noah's driver dropped him at the visitor center, where he got directions to the lighthouse studio. "The artist does workshops on Thursdays," the cheerful volunteer told him. "But she might be there now, finishing up the library panels." Everybody's excited about those. The path to the lighthouse wound along coastal cliffs, wildflowers dancing in the breeze. Noah loosened his tie, feeling ridiculously overdressed in his business attire. He should have changed after landing. But anxiety had overridden common sense. The lighthouse came into view, whitewashed and well-maintained. With a deck wrapped around its base where several large canvases were propped against the railing. A figure moved between them, adjusting their positions. Fiona Noah stopped, suddenly unable to move forward. She wore paint-splattered overalls over a simple white t-shirt. Her auburn hair shorter than he remembered, pulled back with a bandana. She looked completely in her element, focused, confident. At peace in a way she rarely had been during their last months together. What right did he have to disrupt that peace? He was about to turn back when she looked up and saw him. Even from a distance, he could see her freeze, paintbrush suspended mid-stroke. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she set down her brush and walked to the edge of the deck. "Noah?" Her voice carried on the wind, uncertain, but not unwelcoming. "I should have called first," he said, finally finding his feet again, moving. "Closer? I'm sorry." Up close, the changes in her were more apparent, a new steadiness in her gaze, fine lines at the corners of her eyes that hadn't been there before. Beautiful in a deeper way than the young woman he'd known. "What are you doing?" "Here," she asked, not unkindly. A dozen practiced answers died on his lips. In their place came the truth. "I saw your Berkeley exhibition announcement. It made me realize how close you've been all this time, and I just... I needed to see you." Surprise flickered across her face. "You follow my work?" "I never stopped." The admission felt both vulnerable and freeing. "Your community murals project last year was incredible. The one with the elderly residents' stories woven through historical scenes. It was some of your best work." She studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward the lighthouse door. "Would you like to come up? Have coffee?" The studio was unmistakably Fiona-organized chaos, vibrant colors. The scent of turpentine and oils mixing with sea air through open windows. Sketches and reference photos covered one wall. A small living area occupied the space beneath the windows facing the ocean. "It's not much," she said, suddenly self-conscious as she cleared books from a chair for him. "It's perfect," Noah replied, meaning it. "Very you." She busied herself making coffee, an obvious delaying tactic. So, the great Noah Winters takes time off from changing the world to visit small coastal towns? Should I expect a Horizon Systems office to open here next? The gentle teasing eased some tension. Actually, I played hooky from post-conference meetings in Tokyo. My board probably thinks I've been kidnapped. She handed him a chipped mug, daring. The Noah I knew lived and breathed work. The Noah you knew was trying to prove himself. These days, I'm trying to remember why I started in the first place. He took a sip, surprised by the rush of emotion that followed this small intimacy-sharing coffee with Fiona. Again, after all this time, they talked cautiously at first about her exhibition preparations, his recent projects. Gradually, the conversation deepened as afternoon sun moved across the wooden floor. He told her about his growing disillusionment with the tech world's values. His fight to keep Horizon's mission focused on accessibility rather than profit margins. She described finding her artistic voice again in Port Madeline, the community that had embraced her. "Why did you really come, Noah?" she finally asked as sunset painted the room gold. He set down his mug, searching for words, adequate to explain the gradual awakening that had brought him here. "I built everything I thought I wanted. The company, the platform, the recognition. But somewhere along the way, I realized I was building it all on a foundation that cracked the day you left." Her expression softened, but she didn't interrupt. "Last month, we launched neural interface technology that helps people with severe mobility limitations communicate. The demonstration, this teenager drew her mother for the first time since her accident. Everyone was crying, celebrating this breakthrough." Noah paused, the memory vivid. "All I could think was, Fiona should be here to see this, not because it's impressive or successful, but because it matters." She looked away, blinking rapidly. "I'm glad you stayed true to the vision, making technology that actually helps people. But I lost sight of what helped me. Who helped me?" Noah leaned forward. "I left because you felt like you were disappearing. In my world, the truth is I've been disappearing too, becoming someone I don't always recognize. The person I like best is the one I was with you." Fiona stood abruptly, moving to the windows. "It's not that simple, Noah. We can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has changed." "I know." He joined her at the window, careful to maintain distance. "I'm not asking for that. I'm asking if there's a chance for something new. Something that honors who we both are now." The lighthouse keeper's light activated automatically, sending its beam across the darkening water. In its rhythmic flash, he saw tears on her cheeks. "I have a life here," she said quietly. "Work I believe in. People who value me for exactly who I am. I know. That's partly why I came. To see the life you've built. Tits beautiful, Fiona. Wouldn't ask you to leave it." He hesitated. "But maybe there's room in it for me to visit sometimes. Maybe someday I could find a way to build something that bridges our worlds instead of forcing either of us to abandon the one we belong in." She turned to face him fully, her expression impossible to read. "That's a nice thought. But the reality is, you run a billion-dollar company headquartered in San Francisco. I live in a lighthouse teaching art to fishermen's kids. Distance is just geography. The real question is whether what's between us is worth navigating it." Noah took a breath. "For me it is. It always has been. I just didn't fight for it the way I should have." The lighthouse beams swept across them again, illuminating the moment of choice. Fiona reached out slowly, her fingers just brushing his. "Exhibition opens in 3 weeks, she said finally. "If you're serious about this, about finding a way forward, meet me there." Give us both time to think about what that might actually look like. It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning. As Noah left the lighthouse that night, the stars emerging above the ocean seemed brighter than they had in years. Beyond the horizon, the Berkeley Contemporary Museum of Art buzzed with opening night energy, at critics mingling with donors, students sketching impressions in notebooks, waiters navigating the crowd with trays of champagne. Fiona stood in a quiet corner, watching as visitors moved through her exhibition, Community Threads That Bind. her centerpiece installation. A lighthouse keeper's quarters recreated with projected images of Port Madeleine residents sharing their stories had drawn particular attention. Vivian had already reported interest from 2 other museums in touring the exhibition. "Ms. Reed, the Boston curator would like to speak with you," a museum assistant informed her, gesturing toward a woman examining one of the wall panels. "I'll be right there," Fiona replied, smoothing her emerald silk dress, a rare indulgence purchased specifically for tonight. She checked her watch. 8:45 p.m. The exhibition had been open for nearly 2 hours. And still no sign of Noah. Perhaps he'd changed his mind. 3 weeks was long enough to reconsider an impulsive lighthouse visit, to remember all the reasons they hadn't worked before. She wouldn't blame him. Their worlds remained as different as ever. The conversation with the Boston curator was encouraging but brief, interrupted by the museum director announcing the evening's formal remarks. As Fiona made her way to the podium, she scanned the crowd one last time, and there he was, standing at the exhibition entrance, slightly breathless, as if he'd run from the parking lot. Their eyes met across the room, and everything else momentarily faded. Noah gave a small, apologetic smile and mouthed what looked like traffic. The director's introduction brought Fiona back to the moment. She delivered her prepared remarks about community art as a bridge between individual experience and collective memory, trying not to fixate on Noah's presence at the back of the room. "Art reminds us that no life exists in isolation," she concluded. "We are all part of something larger, a continuous story written in shared moments. It's mutual support and the courage to remain open to connection, even when it seems easier to stand alone." Applause followed her from the podium. As the crowd dispersed back to the exhibits, Noah made his way toward her, stopping occasionally to examine pieces along the way. He wore a simple dark suit with no tie, dressed for the occasion but not overly formal. The corporate polish was noticeably toned down. "You were amazing," he said when he finally reached her. "I'm sorry I was late. Board meeting ran over, then Bay Bridge traffic was a nightmare." "You're here," she replied simply. "That's what matters." He gestured toward the exhibition. "Show me your favorites?" They moved through the galleries together, Fiona explaining her process for different pieces, Noah asking thoughtful questions that revealed he'd been studying her recent work. The initial awkwardness gradually melted into something more comfortable, reminiscent of their early days when they'd explore galleries together for hours. "This one," Noah said, stopping before a painting of the lighthouse at sunset, storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "There's something about the light. It feels like hope and uncertainty existing in the same moment." Fiona studied him rather than the painting. "That's exactly what I was trying to capture." As the evening wound down, they found themselves on the museum's terrace, the Berkeley lights spread below them like earthbound stars. "So," Noah said finally, "where do we go from here?" Fiona leaned against the stone balustrade. "I've been thinking about that for 3 weeks. I don't have perfect answers, neither do I." He moved closer, close enough that she could catch the familiar scent of his cologne. "But I have some ideas. I'm listening. First, I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations at Horizon. The board approved it last week. I'll stay on as Chief Innovation Officer, but Marcus is taking over as CEO. Fiona straightened in surprise. "Noah, that's why would you do that?" "Because running the company was consuming everything I am. And because the best work I ever did came when I had balance in my life." He held her gaze steadily. "When I had you to remind me why the work mattered in the first place. I can't be responsible for your career decisions," she said carefully. "You're not. This is about what I want, what I need. The company will thrive under Marcus. I'll still guide our research direction, but I'm taking back my life." He smiled slightly, "part of which involves working remotely at least half the time." Remotely, understanding dawned. "From Port Madeleine? It has great internet, I checked. And certain lighthouse with excellent views that might inspire new ways of thinking about interface design." His expression grew more serious. "But only if that's something you might want to. I won't impose on the life you've built." Fiona took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I have the Berkeley residency for 6 months. After that, I was planning to return to Port Madeline. 6 months gives us time to figure things out. No pressure, no grand promises neither of us can keep. Just ... exploration. Noah's hand found hers on the balustrade. I know we can't go back. I don't want to. I want to go forward, with both of us whole, and neither sacrificing what matters. It won't be easy, she warned. Your world and mine, they're still very different. So maybe that's the point. Maybe we need both worlds to create something better than either of us could alone. His fingers intertwined with hers. 3 years ago, we let fear make our decisions. I'm not afraid anymore, Fiona. I'm just ready to try to build, to see what's possible. The night air carried the scent of eucalyptus and possibility. Below them, cars moved along the streets like thoughts flowing through neural pathways, each on its own journey, but part of a greater connected whole. My next project, Fiona said slowly, is a series exploring technology's human impact. It could use a consultant who understands both the technical and ethical dimensions. Noah's smile grew. Sounds like a perfect collaboration opportunity. Strictly professional, of course, she added, but couldn't help returning his smile. Of course, he moved closer. Though I should warn you, I might have ulterior motives involving lighthouse sunsets and second chances. I might be okay with that. Fiona felt something long dormant awakening within her. Not just the familiar pull toward Noah, but a new sense of possibility. Not a return to what was, but a path toward something that honored both their journeys.
Later that night, as they
walked along the Berkeley Marina, plans tentatively forming between them, Fiona realized that some separations weren't endings but necessary. Pause-sized spaces in which to grow strong enough to build something better. They had both needed to become more fully themselves before they could truly see each other again. The water reflected the waning moon, a pathway of light stretching toward the horizon. Like the best art, like the most meaningful technology. Like love itself, not a destination, but an ongoing creation, evolving with each choice each day. Each moment of courage to keep moving forward together.